even more developer-focused things, focused on some new bits of code that we've put out there. So there's going to be 3 of us sort of dovetailing this one, but I'm going to hand it off to Lee to kick us off here.
Lights on. Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. All right, so we're gonna pull together a lot of the things that we talked about earlier today, flows and transfer guest collections, and bring them together into what I hope is a fun session on portals and science gateways. So this is all about web applications and making things really easy for scientists and researchers to use. Just a reminder, we will be using the tutorial instances for some of the hands-on today. And so if you want to follow along, just remember GW-TUT, TUT. That's how you get all the information about instances and everything. This is how we're going to finish up the day. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of time reminding you about why data portals and science gateways are important to science. And then I will reintroduce, it's been out there for about 4 years now, a concept called the Modern Research Data Portal, which is a design pattern for integrating Globus into your data portal. Excuse me, pulling together again, a lot of the components that we looked at earlier today. Then I'm going to do a little bit of a twist and introduce a new version that we're calling the Django Globus Portal. The Django Globus Portal is an open source portal that you can, it's in GitHub, and you can actually bring it up. And in fact, the hands-on session in the middle of this tutorial is running you through deploying one of our Django Globus portals in your own instance so that you can see how easy it is to do. Just takes a few minutes to bring up the web portal. And then we will then introduce a couple of approaches that you can take to using Globus to get data into and out of that portal. And then we'll talk about Globus Search, which is something that we haven't really gone into depth yet today about. And we'll talk about Globus Search, how to make data discoverable, and the Django Globus Portal does it out of the box. And then we'll wrap up with some nifty additional whiz-bang customizations that you can do of this portal afterwards, just to kind of inspire you for what could be done with this portal. But in general, the big nutshell idea of this last session is it really is not that difficult to bring up a portal that uses Globus and get started with it, and then start customizing it for whatever research application or setting that you're working in. And so hopefully in about 40 minutes or so, you'll be nodding your head and say, yeah, I could do that. Okay. So just a few minutes. I think Vas did a pretty good job earlier of kind of reminding us that in research and science today, we have lots of instruments that are being deployed and built that are generating more and more data every day. And some examples of them would be sequencing centers, which are showing up at universities all over the world. Some of them would be light sources that are not so many of them, but when they come along, they generate, boy, they generate a lot of data. And as they get upgraded, which they do from time to time, they generate another order of magnitude of data. And we have to learn how we're going to get that information. I was going to take this off, sorry. That might help a little bit. How we're going to get that data to our research colleagues so that they can do science with it. There are, what's the word? There are sensor networks, whether they are terrestrial, ecological observation stations, or whether they are satellite systems that are Earth observing satellites that are generating data. And there are other, smaller type things like cryo-EM microscopes and more modern or modest, I'm sorry, instruments that might be in other fields like earthquake engineering, for example, and civil engineering. And all of these things are generating data. And the bottom line is that there's a lot of complexity in the acquisition systems that actually get the data from those instruments. In a lot of cases, it's not so important to the researcher how all that stuff works, and they don't really want to spend their time learning how the guts of the system work. What they really want to do is work with the data after it's been produced. And so that's why we are interested in web portals. I'm going to skip right over that one. So a common data flow pattern that you have when you're working with instruments is, first of all, there's imaging and acquisition. Doesn't necessarily have to be imaging. Sometimes it's just acquisition if it's not a visual thing that you're measuring. But in general, you have to acquire the data and get it physically onto bits onto a disk somewhere. Then after you've got that data acquired, the next step generally is to do something with it, some computing. It might be 3D reconstruction of the data. It might be feature analysis, looking for a particular feature of interest and deciding which of the data sets that you've just collected from samples are actually worth extra investigation, subsequent investigation, and which ones you probably will just archive and never look at again. But anyway, you have to do some computation to decide what's really useful of all that data. And then you want to get it into a store so that it is available for people to look at. And when you do that, you probably have to do some curation of that, so that you probably have to describe the data, provide metadata for it, explain how it's encoded, maybe explain the provenance of the data, where it came from, what steps were used to analyze it, do the 3D reconstruction, et cetera. And so that distribution store, whatever it may be, probably has a lot to do with findability and reusability. Okay. And then finally, we want to make all of that stuff, particularly the stuff that's in that distribution store, available to researchers through some easy to use interface like a web portal. Okay. And then hopefully, once you've done all that, your researchers, you can throw them at that web portal and they'll start doing amazing things that you never thought of doing yourself, which is, again, the whole point of web portals. So if that seems a little bit ambitious for you and you think, well, wait a minute, I don't really have a huge instrument. Let's take a look at something a little bit simpler. So a simpler use case, which I hear a lot from people these days, is I have a web application or a web system, a system with a website that people go to. And what I really want to do is I want to allow researchers to submit or contribute a big data set. So for one place that I hear about this is academic libraries, which are more and more getting in the business of being a archive or a source of curation and maintenance of large data sets that their communities are generating. The problem is, you could say, well, my library has allowed me to submit data sets for years now. And what I'm hearing from the librarians is, well, these things are getting bigger and it's getting harder for the researchers to upload it into my website. There are now thousands of files, sometimes there are terabytes. We've been telling people if you can upload anything up to 10 gigabytes. And now they want to upload a terabyte. I don't know what to do. Well, obviously, that's where Globus would be really helpful in the portal. And so that's one of the things. I mean, that's, why we need the web portal with Globus integrated. The other thing to remember about even a simple use, you might think this is a really simple use case. Well, actually, it's usually the uploading, the contributing the data is just one part of a more complex process that is often referred to as curation. At the very beginning of it, think about this. If your website is being designed to allow somebody to upload terabytes of data, you probably don't want to allow just anybody to do that. you know, whenever they feel like, you know, I don't want somebody uploading my high schooler's hard drive, you know, terabyte hard drive up to the library website just for the fun of it. And so you probably want to have some authorization involved there and some decision making about who's actually allowed to do this or not. So even before they upload something, you want them to describe what is it that you're going to upload. And I want to be able to actually have a switch that I can flip that says, yes, I do want that contribution on my in my library or in my my data store. And then after the data has been provided, you probably want someone, a data scientist, to look it over and figure out, okay, do we have all the metadata we need to make this discoverable? Are there additional things that we could contribute to the description of this data set that would make it easier for people to find and sort out from all the sea of data that other people have been providing? And so reviewing and cataloging. And then finally on the other end of things, maybe every so often you want it to come up for review. So maybe you want every 2 years or every 3 years to, you know, be able to run a report to say, you know, how many people have actually looked at this 10 terabyte data set? And if the number is high, great, let's keep it in there and let's make sure that it, maybe we highlight it for other people to look at. And if it's not, maybe it's something that we want to move to our next tier of storage. Maybe we want to put it in the tape archive because we don't think it's very likely that anybody will be hitting it in the future, and we don't want it on our really costly high-speed storage systems. So anyway, bottom line is there's probably a curation flow that you want involved in this. And so that's another reason why we want a web portal, because that's one of the things you can do with that. So to sum it all up, the reasons that we provide portals and science gateways, first of all, it's to enable a broader audience of researchers to get access to the latest stuff that's been produced. Under the assumption that they will have great ideas for things to do with this that maybe we, the originators of the data, didn't originally envision. And so we want it to be more discoverable and reusable. Another reason is to simplify the access to this data, not have to have the researchers worry about all the ins and outs of how the data was produced, unless maybe that's necessary for provenance. But you know, if it wasn't, then let's not have to worry about, you know, having them go to the light source and get an account there and learn how to use the local computers and learn, you know, where things are stored at the light source facility, but instead just kind of abstract that all away and turn it into a data set, and that's what they work with. We want to be able to add the curation and cataloging. Another nice thing that web portals are really good for is customization of the experience. When you go to a website, typically you have a profile and you have little switches you can do, like, oh, I need accessibility settings because I'm colorblind and I need high contrast displays, or you know, I'm only interested in, or I'm sorry, my preferred data download format is, you know, this is the kind of data that I want. And so only show me the things that I can get that way, or whatever. You can customize it. And that's a nice feature that you can add to a portal that you can't necessarily do if you're showing them everything. And then finally, there are sometimes pretty complex access policies around data. And so, you know, we've heard earlier in the day cases where authorization is non-trivial for research data, particularly in the field of genomics. And there may be a separation between the people who provide the data, that is, whoever it is that's operating this portal, and the people who are making the decisions about who's authorized. And so you have to integrate with somebody else's authorization service. And you can integrate all that stuff together into a web portal in a way that is easy for the researcher to use, but actually pretty complex behind the scenes. And so that is important. All right, so now that I've kind of motivated you and said, yes, we do want to have a web portal, we do want all these great features. In a nutshell, in one slide maybe, what does Globus do for portals? You might be surprised that data transfer isn't the #1 thing on my slide about what Globus can do for portals. Federated login, you know, you might think, well, wait a minute, logging in is like the simplest thing that you can do. Well, actually, in academia, it can be one of the greatest sources of consternation for researchers. I have too many accounts, and I can't keep track of which one to use when. And this system wants me to use this, and that system wants me to use that, and they won't talk to each other. So how do I deal with that? Well, federated login is something that Globus has been doing really well for a long time now. Letting people log in with the accounts that they have, linking those accounts together so that the application knows who you are here and who you are there and who you are there, and lets those things work together. Then your portal can focus on managing the profile and customizing the experience without you having to give out user IDs and reset passwords for people every day and all of that. Nobody wants to have a staff of people whose job it is just to help people change their password. That's kind of silly. So if you are using Globus as the way to log into your portal, you can just totally not have to worry about that, not have anybody on staff worry about that. We provide a rich groups API that you can use for access management. I'll spend just a short time talking about why groups are a really good idea for access control. Then we get to data upload and download at scale, which hopefully after being at GlobusWorld for 2 days now, you're convinced, yes, I really do want to use Globus for data transfer, but that's not what I led with. Discovery. So we have an API called Globus Search. It's a software as a service, actually platform as a service. It is really good for making data easily discoverable, and you as the developer of the portal don't have to do a lot of the nuts and bolts of how to implement an index and how to, where to store all the metadata and all of that. And so I'll spend more time talking about that. And then Vas already told you about flows and why flows are great and how you can use them as the part of the, getting the data into your portal. I won't spend very much time rehashing that part because Vas just did that. So one point that I wanted to make before I go any further is that because Globus is software as a service and platform as a service, everything that I'm talking about today, all the APIs that I'm talking about, you can access in one of 4 different ways. At the very high end, you can always access stuff in our web app. So you saw how you can see your flows in the web app. Of course, you know how to do data transfer in the web app just by pointing and clicking. You can also do that with our Python SDK. Oops, I think I'm missing one. Yeah, the Python CLI, the command line interface. So everything that you can do in the web app, pretty much, you can also do in the command line interface and script things. So if you're really good at shell scripts and you want to automate things with just by writing shell scripts, go for it. You can do that in the Python CLI. If you want to go a layer down and you want to start writing your own applications in Python, you can do that in the SDK. And if you really want to get hardcore, you can access our REST APIs using whatever REST framework you use and actually hit the API endpoints yourself in your own language, whatever that may be. And then we have these, the 5 core APIs: transfer, auth, groups, flows, and search. As kind of the fundamentals underneath all of that. But the real thing that I want you to note is that just because you decide that you want to go hardcore and you want to access one of these APIs through REST and skip Python and all of that, that does not mean that it all has to be done in code. For example, if you decide that you want to use groups as the way to handle authorization in your web app, that's great. Your code can actually check group membership to see if somebody's authorized to do something. But to create that group, you can do that in the web app. To add people or remove people from the group, you can also do that in the web app. So you don't have to write all the code in your application in order to use one of these things. Just do the things that your application has to do that way, and use our the web app to do all the maintenance of things and the setup of things. And so that's an important point. All right, so I mentioned that there are 5 core APIs. We talked about 3 of them already in previous tutorials today: auth, transfer, and flows. And so I'm not going to go into those in a lot of detail. Groups, it's important, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. But I do have one slide on it that I want to share with you about why I think you should be using groups in your portals. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the search API, since we haven't covered it yet today. All right, Globus Groups for authorization. Let's see. So Globus Connect server and the transfer API already use groups for guest collection permissions. So if you create a guest collection on your GCS v5 endpoint, or if you create a shared, what do we call it again? The shared endpoint, or a share in GCS v4, you can set an access control. You can set an ACL that gives permissions to a group. Okay, so it's already built into transfer and groups. I'm sorry, transfer and GCS. But your web application can also use group membership as a way to authorize features in your portal. So you can say, in order for somebody to use this feature or access this part of my portal, when they go there, I'm going to check to see if they are a member of this particular Globus group or not. Okay, it's a really easy way for you to decide to manage permissions in your own thing. It's really a very simple call to our SDK to find out whether the person who's logged in is a member of a particular group or not. And again, like I said, you can create the group without any code at all. Just go into the web app, create a group, and you can even add and remove people from it manually if you want to, if it's not necessary for that to be automated in your application. But your code can just check, is a person a member of the group or not? We have portals that do that, and it's really nice because it simplifies the portal code a lot. You know, writing your own group management and your own permission system is a lot of complexity, and you can make mistakes and have bugs that that your team has to be responsible for years to come. Whereas if you are all it really is just a check to see if somebody's a member of a group or not, you're probably not going to mess that up, and it'll be really easy to maintain long term. The other feature that I wanted to highlight for when you're dealing with data portals is guest collections. If you are doing something if you're creating a data portal, you probably want to be using guest collections in Globus, because it's a heck of a lot easier to write code against a guest collection than it is against map collections. Okay, remember, map collections are the ones where whoever comes in, their identity is mapped to a local account on the system. Guest collections get to use access control lists. So basically, any Globus identity, any Globus group can be added to an ACL. But the nice thing about this is that the authentication that has to happen in order to access a map guest collection is much simpler. And doesn't require having a user, a human there to authenticate periodically whenever things expire. So the way to do that, again, is to grant the access manager role to the application. So whenever you have a Globus application, you're going to register it at developers.globus.org, just like we did in the last session. You're going to get a client ID and a client secret, and that's going to be configured in your data portal. That is my data portal ID. Everything that the data portal itself does on its own uses that client ID and password, a client ID and secret for authentication. You give that client ID permissions to guest collections or whatever else you're checking groups, and ACLs for. That allows the application then to manage things. So the application can create access control entries, add people to the permissions to that guest collection, remove people from the permissions. It can, basically it gives it the ability to manage the access to that guest collection. Let's see. Another thing that's handy to be able to do is to give, when you give the application an administrative role on a collection, it can also check status of transfers to and from that. So you can basically have all the ability that all the things that you can do in the management console, the Globus management console, see what transfers are currently going to and from that collection. So you can actually monitor whatever transfers people have started and notice when they've completed. So that might be important in your portal to be able to do. All right. So that was all I was going to say about groups. That was all I was going to say about guest collections. Now I want to talk about search, okay? Data description and discovery. So what is Globus Search? Essentially, it is the ability to store metadata records about anything. So anything that you want to have be discoverable or searchable, and that you can create a metadata record for, basically just a list of names and values, or whatever schema you desire. You can throw those records into the Globus search system. I'll show you in just a second what the API looks like so you can get a better sense for concretely how that works. It's schema agnostic. So we don't enforce any particular schema on your metadata. You have to decide what metadata standards you're going to use in your portal. And so that maybe if the portal is being used by a large research community, that could be a very complicated discussion that you get to have with your researchers about what they want the metadata to look like in order for it to be usable for them. But the good news is that Globus doesn't enforce anything on that. And so it's up to you to decide what your metadata is going to look like. And then once you've got your records in a Globus search index, you can, using the API, do simple searches and do very complex searches. One of the great things about Globus Search is that it helps you create search facets. So if you want to provide a nice faceted interface like the Amazon catalog, where you say, I want hard drives, and then you say, I want only ones that are a terabyte and up, and then it narrows it down, and then you say, okay, well, I only want ones that cost less than $100, and it'll narrow it even further. That's faceting. And Globus Search will do that for you and make it really easy to do that in your web portal. You'll see lots of examples of that in the second half of this, this tutorial. All right. The other nice thing about Globus Search is that just like we do for guest collections, where you can apply interesting access policies to your guest collections in Globus, you can also define access policies for your metadata. So you can say, whenever you put a record into the search index, you can add to it a policy statement that says, this is the visibility of this record. So you can throw records up with all kinds of different visibilities. And whenever a search request comes in with a particular identity, the results will be tailored based on the identity of whoever made that request and whatever the access policy of all the different search records was. So you can have private search records that are only visible to members of a particular group. That's really handy in curation because you can have a group that can see everything, and then you can have only people who can only see public stuff and people who can only see things that are under review, etc. So let's see. Right, so data policies are defined generally by the ACLs on guest collections, and in Globus Search, it's done by setting the visibility of the metadata elements that you put into your index. All right, so what does the API look like in a nutshell? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. If you want to ingest a new record, you do that with a post request against the index endpoint. And where is my pointer? Oh my gosh, I don't think is it over there? Yeah, okay. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No. Man, I don't get a pointer. That's too bad. Okay, anyway, post right here. So basically, in the body of your post, when you do a HTTP post, you have to give it a body. It's basically a big JSON blob that says, first of all, here is the identifier of the object that I'm describing, and then here is all the metadata. in a big JSON blob, okay? And then also, then there's a third section, which is here is the visibility of this particular record. So is it public? Is it only available to this particular Globus group? Is it only available to this list of Globus identities? Whatever it is. That's what you specify in the visibility. And that's basically, that's all there is to adding something to an index in Globus search. You just do a post request, bang, new record in the index. It gets automatically indexed so that it'll come back in search results. So what can you do for searching? If you want to do a simple query, so basically just provide a query string and have it be matched against any records in the index, you can do that with a GET request where you say GET, say index, and then the ID, that's a UUID of your index, which you get when you create the index, and the search endpoint, and provide a query. In this case, we're looking for anything that has HDF5 in it. So probably all your HDF5 files. That's what a query looks like. And what you get back in the results is just a big long list of all the IDs and the metadata that is associated with them. All the records basically that have that HDF5 as a type in them. If you want faceted search and you want to be able to say, not just do a query, but also do a query and then show me all the facets for that, you would do a post request again. And in the document that you post, you have to say, first of all, here's my query. And also here are the facets that I want you to return for me. In addition to just, give me all the hits, I want maybe, data type and sizes and maybe even owners or maybe dates. And here's how I want them to be organized, sorted, et cetera, like that. That all goes into the document that you post with your request, and what comes back is your hits and all the facets that go along with it and the totals for all the different values of the facets. It'll be a lot clearer when I actually show you a portal that uses it in just a second. All right, modern research data portal design pattern. Okay. 2018, I'm dating myself. 2018, in 2018, this paper was published, the Modern Research Data Portal Design Pattern for Network Data Intensive Science. And we described in it generally a design pattern for portals. The key features of it are Science DMZ, which you heard about yesterday afternoon, how to organize, how to manage, how to build your network and your data movers so that you can access things fast from your data transfer nodes. The data transfer nodes themselves with Globus Connect server on them. Let's see, the Globus platform services, these 5 APIs I've been telling you about, and then a portal framework that ties it all together. So those are kind of the key elements of the modern research data portal. Globus Connect's role in that is basically to provide a way to access the data. So the key here is that when you think about putting up a website, very often you think about, okay, here's my web server, and I have a POSIX, I have a big file system on the server, and everything's there. That's not what is the modern research data portal's design pattern. The modern research data portal's design pattern is you have a web server that's one box, and you have a Globus Connect server where all your data lives. And the web server is going to interact with Globus Connect server through all of our APIs. Okay, so the key here is that the data lives on a Globus Connect endpoint or collection, okay? And all the accesses happen through that collection and through our APIs. So it's not all, tied at the hip on one single VM that your web server runs on. And just to remind you, what that does is it frees you up to store your data wherever you want it. Because we have all the storage connectors. It could be in S3, it could be in Google Cloud, it could be in HPSS, it could be behind iRods. Doesn't really matter. Because you're using Globus Connect, and accessing everything through it and its APIs, the storage that it is abstracted, and you can actually interact with storage on any of these things through the same interfaces. I just wanted to remind you of this picture. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but this was the Science DMZ architecture. The key here is your border router, and not putting all of this machinery, all of these fast DTNs behind, whoa, didn't realize that, behind your firewall. So put it behind your border router, use the routing, oh, that was a big mistake, Lee. Use the rules on your border router to make sure that only the traffic that you want goes down here to your Science DMZ, and have a fast data path out onto the WAN. Okay, and separate it from all of your institutional stuff back here. So just make sure that your DTNs aren't behind a firewall that slows everything down. All right, so that's your motivation. Now let's actually look at some web portals. So I wanted to show you the Argonne Leadership Class facility is our supercomputing center at Argonne National Lab, and we have a data co-op, which has the nice acronym ACDC. We call it the ACDC portal. Little heavy metal there, I guess, or something. Anyway, so most of the things that you see here, everything that says APS in front of it is an advanced photon source beamline. A beamline is basically one port in the ring that the big X-ray photon source ring, and they have about 30 different places around there where they can stick samples in and shine X-rays through. And so each beamline kind of operates as its own little shop. And several of them are using our Django Globus Portal as the way that they expose the data to the researchers who submit samples to them. So that basically, oh, I didn't mean to click, sorry. Getting a little bit ahead of myself. And so basically, what the ACDC portal does, or will be doing soon, is allowing researchers who submit samples to come to this website and search for and find the data sets that are generated after their samples are run through the advanced photon source, which is a really super brilliant X-ray microscope. So let me just give you, not all of them are at the APS. This one down here, the materials data facility, that's not an APS source. It's materials models and yeah, data sets. And so let me just show you what one of these portals looks like. So each of the things that was on the previous page is an independent portal. So this right here is one of the portals. And here's what I was talking about when I was talking about facets. So like along the side, you can see how many things in the search index match these particular search facets. Over here, you see all search results. Right now, the query is just everything. Show me everything. And if you go down to the bottom, you can see it's paginated. There's a whole bunch of different pages of results. Each of these things is either a data set or some kind of other record in the system. And as I go ahead and click different facets, the numbers all update everywhere. So I just clicked on one DFT 47 records match that, and all the other records here update so that if I were to click on this, you would see that only 2 things match both of those criteria. And so, and there they are right there, just 2 results. If I click on one of the results, then I get all the information about that particular one. Oh, come on, yeah. And you can see related papers, related data sets, et cetera. You can see a whole bunch of information about that particular thing. Here's some of the metadata that was recorded about that particular data set. And then there's a big button that says get the data. So I'm going to go back here and reset. I thought there was a button to reset, but I guess there isn't. Okay, look. Yeah, lots of dates. I'm going to get some of the recent stuff from 2022 just to make sure that it's the good stuff. And click on Get the Data. And voila, it takes you to Globus in order to get the data. So the whole idea here is that, you know, they built up this portal, they're ingesting a lot of data into it, and they're giving the researchers a really simple way to get access to the data, and to find the data is interesting to them, and then to get it out of the system using Globus. Now, in this particular case, I think this data doesn't look particularly big. They could have done this with, you know, some off-the-shelf commodity web portal, but some of the data sets can be really, really big. And you definitely want to be using Globus in order to transfer it out of that facility, okay? Let's see if there was anything else I wanted to show you about AC/DC before we move on. I didn't show you, you know, doing a query up here, but that's another thing that you would probably do. Let me see what some of these things are. Yeah. Could find just things that match, you know, a text query like that. That's what I was talking about earlier when I said you could do a simple query and then ask for the facets that go along with it. Yeah, that's probably good for the moment. I'm going to switch back to slides. Make sure we're okay. So next step is to show you how you can create and deploy how you can deploy your own data portal using this same Django Globus Portal Framework that the APS is using for their searches, the materials data facility is using for its one. The key features that I want you to be watching for as we work with this portal are the federated login. When we log in, we're logging in using Globus. So that means that I can use my University of Chicago account. I could use an Exceed account. I could use an ORCID account. I could use any of the accounts that work with the InCommon Federation. And all the permissions are based off of those IDs, those Globus IDs. You'll see that there are several ways that you can export your data from the portal using Globus. And actually, we'll spend some time talking about your options for how to do that, ranging from really easy and kind of basic to harder and really cool looking. Let's see, you'll see Vass will spend a little bit of time showing you how you can swap out the default index that all the Django Globus portals start with your own search index that you create yourself and start to put your own metadata into, so that it can actually be your index and people can start finding things that you want them to find. You'll see how the search results and the landing pages are templated in Django. So you can actually customize them. You can add preview pictures. You can add other UI elements. You saw in the MDF, the materials data facility, how it showed you related papers. You can add those things through templating. We'll also show you right off the bat how you can bring this up really quickly using something called cookie cutter Django, which is a way of bootstrapping a project really quickly. Just by answering a few questions as you go along, and it just does what you tell it to do. All right, Vass, are you ready to show them application registration? I should have given you a warning.
Okay. So we're going to tag team this a little bit, go back and forth between myself and Steve to get you up and running. So am I on here? Am I coming through the speakers? Okay. So we're going to do a couple of things, and I'm not plugged into video. Okay, so yeah, if you you haven't already, yeah, please do go and claim your instance. You'll just have to type a handful of commands and you'll actually have a portal up and running, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna use mine. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna register a client with Globus Auth. That will be our portal client. So the portal is gonna be an application that is gonna use Globus Auth, as Leo was talking about, for getting credentials in order to call on Globus services and do other things. So we will go back to where we were before the break, where I registered a client for as a native app. We're now going to do it for a confidential client because the portal can keep a secret. So we're going to get a client ID and a corresponding secret, and then you'll use those when Steve comes up here and walks through the installation. So we'll go to developers.globus.org, and we're going to register our app. So we click here. Okay, I don't have a lot of tabs open right now, Lee. That's bizarre. Okay. Okay, so that was the one we did for the native app. Let's do, okay, so I'm going to go, if you haven't done this before, you'll have to create a project. It will prompt you, but I'm just going to go and add this down here, add new app. And this is going to be GlobusWorld 22 portal. This is not a native application. This will have its own callback URLs. And rather than try and type them, I've got a little cheat sheet that you can use. So if we scroll down on our tutorial materials page, to this section here, where it says portal deployment exercise, click here for sample code. So I'm going to just click on that link. Takes you to this repo. And in here, so we're registering the app, and then we're going to deploy the portal using these commands here. So I'm just going to click on that because it has the URLs just noted in the code. So here we are. So these are the two URLs that we will register with Globus Auth as sort of official callback URLs for the three-legged auth flow to complete. So all you have to do is replace the N with the number of your tutorial instance. So, oops, sorry. I'll go here and I'm going to use, I think I was using 35 for this one. So that's it. So what will happen here is we're going to run the app at this URL here. And when the user authenticates, it's going to go out, call Globus Auth, and Auth will redirect back to this URL in the app. So click that, create the app. And so now we need two things to take away from here. We need a client ID. So I'm going to copy that and, oops, what was that? I'm just going to tuck it away here in an editor. So that's the client ID, and then we need a corresponding secret. So you can generate multiple secrets, and you know, best practice would be to rotate these secrets periodically, so you can, you know, revoke the one and then create a new one. So this is for GlobusWorld tutorial, generate secret, and as with any good secret, you only see it briefly, so you copy it. And then we will close that down, and I will save it here very securely to be recorded on Zoom. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna keep those secrets. I mean, we're gonna keep that pair of credentials here, and then we'll copy paste them in just a minute here when Steve comes up to do the walkthrough. So I am going to now shell into my instance. So, whoops. So we're going to do it as user dev n, dev35 at tut35. Okay. This is awfully slow still, but okay. Globus _ 2022 pound. Okay. I'm not sure if it's my network playing up again. So hopefully we'll be dropped into the instance here very shortly. And Steve, you may as well come up and pick up from here, because I know you're going to walk through this here. So I just wanted to get you to that point where we're registering the app. We have the client ID as secret, and then we are, in theory, we are in the instance and ready to go. I'm going to try another instance. I'm not sure why this isn't working. Okay, there it is. So I'm gonna hand it over to Steve from here. Yeah. Yeah, why don't you go ahead? Okay. I'll just scooch over here. Oh, are you mic'd up? Yeah, turn it on.
Everybody here, Nick? Is that coming through speakers? No?
On.
Check. There we go. Okay. Let me bump this up a little bit. Thanks, Voss. So I'm going to SSH into a different endpoint here. I have my own little cheat sheet that I'm using. So I'm going to SSH into dev1.
Is that legible in the back, or should we make a little
bigger?
A couple notches
Good.
bigger?
I can go bigger here. Oop. No, I lost it. Okay, there we go.
Maybe a little bigger. Better? More? Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to SSH into here the same way that Voss was doing before. I think I forgot the, yep. Try this again. It's tough when you can't see it. There we go. Okay. So we're in here. Let me lower this a little bit so I don't have to jump back and forth too much. What we're going to be doing here essentially is going to be using Python and Django to build this portal. There's a couple different ways to build things with Python Django. One of the ways we want to start with is activating a virtual environment. This just installs all your modules into sort of one spot that you're not installing onto a global system thing. So we can keep track of what modules we're installing. So I'm going to source that virtual environment here. And then you'll see that it's activated over here with the parentheses by .portal. So now we're in our virtual environment. If I do a pip freeze, a pip module is installed using pip install. And it's basically a Python module that you can use in various types of applications. So if we do a pip freeze here, it's going to show us what's installed. Two things of note. One is cookie cutter. Lee already mentioned that. And also the Django Globus Portal Framework, DGPF, is also installed here. So cookie cutter we're going to use to actually build this. And I'm going to point it to a repo that has a pre-built Django Globus app. So if I do that, pull this up a little bit so we can see. So I do this cookie cutter. Now, this is where you're going to input your client ID and secret that Voss generated that last step. You can say yes here. We can name this whatever. I'm going to just name it Globus app just for consistency. And Django convention usually is to prepend the project with Django. So Django _ Globus app. You can change that project sub if you want. It defaults to the value that is in the brackets. So we're going to default to that. A description, I'm going to pretty much default through these. Author name, go with researcher, researcher@gateway.org. Again, all of these things you can change. So here's your client ID. If you're following through this, you can paste your client ID here, or we can keep it the default. I've set up some client IDs in the background that will work with this application. So I'm going to default to that, and I'm also going to default with the secret key. Again, if you're following and you have those secret key and client IDs generated, you could paste it here as well. The search index out of the box, out of DGPF, we have one pre-built. you're probably just going to click through here as well as a default. And then the portal endpoint ID. You don't have to worry about this for now. You can actually do this as the default. I'm going to show what that does a little bit later. If we don't have any errors, it should have worked. So if I do an LS here, we'll see right here, Django Globus app. So that is what Cookie Cutter just built for us. If I change, well, before we do that, let me bring this down a little bit. So we've done this step and we completed that. Just for simplicity to have an environment variable that has our project slug in, I'm going to export that. And then I'm going to change directory into that project slug. If we do a quick LS here, this is basically a Django application here. So we're seeing a couple different things. We're seeing an API folder that holds all of our API logic. We're seeing some Docker stuff in here, and we're also seeing templates and static files. So this is basic structure of a Django application built off of Python. So next thing we have to do, there are requirements that need to be installed as a result of this cookie cutter process. So in our virtual environment, we're going to install those requirements. So let me copy and paste this. So that goes through pretty quick. There's not many in there. If I do, let me clear this. So if I do a cat on that requirements, this is basically all we're installing here. Django, we're reinforcing the DGPF install there. Probably didn't need that since it was already installed before. Something called Django REST framework, which makes it easier to build APIs. Gunicorn, which is going to actually run the application. And then a couple other things that, again, will be a little bit more relevant later. So now that we have all that installed, we need to edit the settings here. This is because we need to add an additional dependency called Django extensions, which if you look down here, this Python run server plus, that requires Django extensions. So cookie cutter project or the pre-installed stuff doesn't have this. So we're going to edit this. So we'll add.
And I should point out that this is really just, it's a bit of a hack because we're running this on EC2 instances, which have some limitations on running things with HTTPS. So we didn't want to have a whole SSL infrastructure stood up here. So this is kind of a little side door. You wouldn't normally have to do this, and you should not do this in a production environment.
Couple of things we need that Django needs to run before we actually spin anything up, and I show you what the portal is going to look like. The migrate command, Django has the idea of models. So we have user models, we have really any type of model that you want to install and include into your Django project. We're going to actually build those models with the migrate command. So we'll run that. And you'll see the database that we're using here is just a SQLite database. Django has plugins for any kind of database you want to use. So if you want to use Postgres, if you want to use Mongo, you can use all that stuff. So right now, just keep it simple. We're doing SQLite. I'm going to run a similar command called collect static, which is going to get all of our static files, our JavaScript files, our images, things like that. Okay, so we see a lot of files copied over to our static file, 220 of them. And fingers crossed, once we run this, we should be up and running. Okay, so now you see we have the server is up and running here in AC2. Let me go back to here, copy and paste this. This would be our URL. So there's our portal up and running on that EC2 instance. And you can see here, it looks a lot like the other frameworks that Lee was showing. It gives you auth and login out of the box. So logging in here, I've already logged in. If I rescinded the scopes and everything, you would go through that login process, and I would probably choose University of Chicago to log in, and it would bring me back here. The search data is not terribly interesting here, but it can show a couple of things. Similar to what Lee was showing before, we can filter out. But one thing I want to show here before I turn it back over, there's the helper pages in this transfer sync process. So I clicked on a file here, just some general info below. If I want to sync or transfer this file to another endpoint, I click here and it's going to open up the web app. So essentially, I could choose any file that I want here or all of them. I'm not going to transfer these because they're quite large. But I could say I wanted to put it to the tutorial endpoint 1. So from here, I would just click and I would start the process to transfer that over tutorial endpoint 1. So that's basically it as far as the process goes. As long as you have that EC2 instance going up and running, you can have your portal framework up and ready to go.
Great. One thing that I wanted to point out here is that Steve just showed you the simplest way to integrate Globus Transfer into your portal, which is just to link to our web app. And actually the link, ooh, I better be careful here. The link that, that Steve showed you, that transfer, whatever, was actually not just a link to app.globus.org, which is the main URL for the web page, but it was actually a link to a particular collection, and actually probably even a subdirectory in that collection, which was the data set that you are looking at right there. So that link, that transfer sync, basically has built into it app.globus.org and also the collection ID, the UUID for that collection, and probably also the path within that collection to that particular data set. And when you give somebody that link, it just takes them to that collection in the web app. That's the easiest way to do it. Okay. What you will also notice about that was that it linked to our web app. In other words, it took you out of the portal and into a totally different web application. And it's a little bit jarring from a user experience perspective. Okay. So that's what I meant earlier when I said, you know, we're going to show you a range of options from really easy, which this is, but not particularly customized to your portal, which it also is not very customized. It's kind of a jarring user experience. We'll now kind of give you a progression of ways of making it more finessed as we go along.
Do you want me to go to that now, Lee, or do you want to? Yeah. Okay, so this is a pre-built, this is a separate, this is using the GGPF, Django Globus Portal Framework, but separate from what I just brought up. I added something in here with transfer. So if I click on transfer, I'm already logged in, it's good. So if I click on transfer, you're gonna see something that's sort of similar to the web app, but is very custom now. So all of this is built custom using Python and Django in the background. So that's your server side stuff. And then you have on the front end, basically a single page application, a SPA, that's using React and React Router. So all of this, it's basically doing the same thing that the web app is doing, but now it's not taking you out of the app. You're staying within, as Lee has said before.
So to translate what Steve means, when he says React, what he means is JavaScript.
Yes, JavaScript.
So basically, this is all running in your browser at this point. Okay, so what he's got there is a single page application that's all coded in JavaScript. It's all downloaded to your browser, and it executes inside your browser. It's not on the server side.
Thanks, Lee. So I'm just going to show a basic transfer here. Again, this is all custom code running in the background. And let's just transfer everything over. But first, let's search for an endpoint here. So we'll search for the tutorial endpoints. Empty directory, good. So we're basically going to take the files that if you remember, we went through the cookie cutter process. That last bracket had the portal ID. That is what that is browsing on the left-hand side. So I'm browsing that portal ID that I put in and defaulted through.
The collection ID. The
collection ID. And that actually is defaulting to tutorial endpoint 1. So I'm going to be transferring essentially stuff from endpoint 1 to endpoint 2. Let's just take these 4 files and we'll transfer over. Hopefully we get an accepted, which we did. We're going to check the status of the request, which is going to take us to eventually this. What I would like to do is build this task lookup into the actual portal itself. For now, we're going out and we're seeing that 4 files, 0 directories, all succeeded. So if I go back to my transfer and I search again for tutorial, we should see those files over in endpoint 2. So that was all done within your own web app. aside from checking the status of the request, you didn't have to leave the web app. And again, all built on JavaScript and Python.
One of the things that I think was important about this is that this is a work in progress in that there are still parts of it that are linking out to the Globus web app. So that's what I was talking about a little while ago when I said one of the powerful things about a software as a service, platform as a service thing is that you can pick and choose which parts of it you're going to replace when. So you don't have to do it all in one step in order to have something useful. You can still use the Globus web app in the parts that you haven't fully customized yet and do the rest of it in your own code. And so that's where we're at right now with this. If you come back to GlobusWorld 2023, I am really careful there. I am really hoping that you didn't crack your screen. I am really hoping that we will be able to show you more pieces of this React JavaScript stuff that you can just drop into your portals that do nifty things like, you know, check the status without taking the person over to the Globus web app, and maybe things like, you know, find out if a file is on a collection or not, and if it is, then start a flow or something like that. But for right now, this is what we've got. Okay. Now, Bass, are you going to show us how to swap out your search index?
Yeah, I'm going to show you. So you've seen the sort of the canned index here. I have another one that I've canned for tutorial purposes. So show you that literally by just changing a little bit of code in like 4 files, you can get up your own index up and running. So I'm going to go back into this instance. Okay, so I was running. So actually, let me just do this first. So here is my portal running. I'm on TUT 53. So this is the exact same thing that Steve just did that maybe some of you are doing. So I'm going to just cancel that for a bit. And so we're going to change a few things. The first one, most important, is we're going to change the definition of the search index. So this is going to be the various attributes and the facets that are going to be used to search this new index, not the Terrafuser one. I have some other data. It's also satellite image data. But so I'm going to edit this file. I've saved Project Slug in my environment, so I don't have to sort of keep going into that. So hopefully I've got all the paths correct here. And for some reason, the terminal is horrendously slow.
So Vass, I hate to interrupt, but
yes.
I'm just going to provide a tiny bit more context here, okay? So what Vass is going to be doing now is showing how you can basically, well, let me back up a minute. When you did the really simple install of the Globus Django portal yourself, and you just followed those like 10 commands and got it deployed, one of the things the cookie cutter asked was, which search index do you want to use? And we hit the default, which is our search index. It's pre-populated with a bunch of stuff. If you're going to build a portal, obviously you want to have your own index. And so that's what Vass is showing you how to do right now, is basically stop using the default, start using my index, and start putting stuff into it.
Right. And so this is where the search index is defined in this search.py file. So you can get an idea. That's the name. So it's an OSN index. Here are the different facets. So you saw that in the search page: location, dates, orbit groups, etc., with their various types. So there's, depending on the facet, you have different attributes to define what's actually displayed that allows the user to sort of progressively refine their search. So what I'm going to do is actually replace that with this definition here. So all I'm going to do is take this whole search indexes dictionary and just wipe. I could just add it and would have a couple search indexes, but just I'm keeping this simple for now. So this is a much simpler index. I chose just to have 2 attributes. So the year of this whatever survey, the scan, and the survey number. So our little facets will be limited on the left side there. So I'm just going to save that. And then we obviously need to change the way things are rendered because things are going to look a little different. So first I will also change this file here, which contains the index fields and how they retrieved. So let me do that. So you can do some pre-processing here before you actually show values in the portal arm. We have this one's actually quite simple. I'm not going to change too much here. So all I'm going to do is extract the file name, and then the rest of the stuff is just, I'm showing the various attributes that are going to be shown on the details page. So we're going to show all of these things. In addition to the year and the survey number, we're going to show, latitude, longitude, etc., other things that are relevant metadata for this specific data set. Again, as Lee said, when you're working with Globus Search, it's up to you to define what goes into the search index. So I've chosen to have these 8 or 9 attributes in this search index. So I'm literally just going to blow all that away and replace it with this. Oops. And we'll save that. So now we've done, that's really all there is to it as far as configuring a new search index. The next 2 files that I want to change are just the eye candy. So we've got, this is one file. This is the detail landing page when you actually select an index entry. So I'm going to edit that so it can show the right fields, because obviously the fields have changed in the index and they are going to look like this. So this is going to be a lot shorter. So this is HTML template. If you've done any Django Flask kind of stuff, this should all look very familiar. If you haven't, it's pretty straightforward because I can do it. So it must be really easy. So this is what we were showing previously. Now we're just going to replace it with a slightly different version that pulls the metadata for this index. So saving that. And the last one is the actual search results template, which lives over here, search results. So I'm going to, oops, I've got to edit that first. Okay. So this is a nice little log of all that it takes, just these 4 edits. And again, here is what you're actually seeing in the current OSN index. You're seeing the orbit path number, location, etc. We're going to replace that with this, this view, which is just going to show us those 2 attributes. Okay, so save that. And now, magic. Let's run the portal again. And if I didn't break any of the copy pasting, I should be able to reload. See the same thing, but now when I click on the index, I didn't change the landing page, so it's not the Teradata now. But now you see very different. This is now a totally different data set with different facets. As we said, there's just 2 here, the year and the survey. So I can say, show me 2018, those. So click filter results, and I should see just 5 data items listed, which are not listed. So I must have missed something. Okay. So I obviously did not copy paste something correctly. But point is, let's just see if we can. So this will now, the detail page has now also changed, and I'm showing different sets of metadata here. And I can do the same thing that Steve showed earlier. I can drop into Globus web app and transfer and sync those. Or I can even just say download via HTTPS. So I know, for instance, that these are actually just very small images. So I could do that. So this also shows how the HTTPS download capability can be leveraged when you have quote unquote small data that people can just pull down directly through the browser without firing off a managed transfer. So this is just a JPEG image, so I can just download it, just normal browser behavior, but filtered through the Globus Auth permissions. So that's it.
So just to summarize, the things that Vast changed were What is queried when you query the index, because there are different fields in the index now. What do the search results look like? What gets showed for each item in the search results? What does the landing page of each data set look like when you actually click on it in a search result and you see the details? And what was the fourth thing you changed, Fess?
The search results, the landing page, and the first two were the search facets and the fields. So the search index definition and
right,
the fields.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
if there's any pre-processing required, if you're just passing them through. Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
So let's see, we've shown the fancy transfer. We've shown changing the search index. I'm going to cap this off. How much time do I have? Oh, perfect. I'm going to cap this off by showing you. Let's see, we've done that. We've done that. Select destination. Whoa. Okay. There we go. Okay. I'm going to cap this off with a few more fancy customizations that you can do to the Django Globus portal. So we've shown you now several different ways that you can integrate with transfer. So different styles of letting people move data out of the portal after you've discovered it with your search index, if that's what you want to do. We've also shown you that you can swap out the index and put in a whole new search index and have it search a totally different set of data sets, and customize the fields, customize the landing pages, et cetera. So here are just a couple other things that have been done. These are examples of real deployments of the Django Globus portal that are being used by the Advanced Photon source and our other portals that we're using. So the first one that I wanted to show you was adding image previews to the search results. Actually, this is not the search results so much as it is the landing pages, I think, but let me go there and show you what I'm talking about. Which portal am I supposed to be in right now? Not that one, not that one. That one, okay. So this, which portal am I? Yeah, this is, okay. This is one of the APS beamlines. It's called XPCS. Actually, let me go back up here. This is the APS XPCS beamline. It is a beamline that specializes in photon correlation spectroscopy. That's what XPCS stands for. And so they run samples through and do photon correlation spectroscopy with them and generate data sets. What's neat about their portal is that when you, actually, I probably should have, hang on. Let me find some of the stuff that's more recent because the pictures are a little bit prettier. May 10th, 2022, that's pretty recent. Oh, only one result, okay. So their landing page for data sets looks like this. And what they're doing, all of this stuff lives on that Globus endpoint. So all the image previews and everything, they all live on the endpoint, and they're all accessed using the HTTPS interface to our to the collection. So basically, we're serving up the images that are included in these web pages using Globus Connect and HTTPS. These images are all created by a Globus flow that the data runs through when it comes off the beamline. And the flow, one of the stages of the flow is to post-process the data that came off of the Advanced Photon source. It generates these preview pictures so that the researchers can tell by looking at them whether this is an interesting sample read or not. It also generates a bunch of other metadata as well, but the pictures are the pretty things and easy to look at a glance. And then it takes all the results of that and sticks it on the Globus collection so that it's available to the portal. And it also takes the metadata and sticks it in their search index. And then it's available in the portal. And we get new ones every week, pretty much, or close to it. And so the way that you incorporate these images is just by changing the landing page, just like Vas just did a second ago when he switched over to a different index. It's just that this one has more stuff in it, okay? And it pulls the images through HTTPS links from the Globus collection. So that's one thing you can do, is you can make your landing pages prettier with pictures. The second thing I wanted to do, I don't actually need to show you a slide for this, is you can customize the way your facets are handled. So all the facets we've shown you so far are all text-based. So they're all text values and checkboxes. So when you want to, pick a particular facet or, pull out a search by a particular facet, you would just click one of those things. Take a look at this one. The materials data facility decided that rather than having a, text values, they would use a slider to select a range of things. And when you narrow things down there and do filter results, it changes the number of results by filtering things that are only in this particular range. Do I know what an orbit is in the materials data facility? I have no idea what that is. All I know is that if I make the slider shorter, I get fewer results. The researchers know what that means, and they actually find this very useful. And it was a big improvement for them from a usability perspective. And you can do that, again, by changing the Django template that displays the facets. So the facet information all comes from the search index when you do a search, but then it gets filtered through that Django template, and that's what puts the nifty user interface controls here. And so you can do a lot of customizations with this portal framework and actually go a long way to getting a data portal started that has Globus fully integrated into it. Just by starting out with this one, you can start out with a cookie cutter if you want to, answer those 5 questions, have it up and running, and then just start swapping out, swapping your index into it, telling it what facets you want, changing the Django templates to change the landing pages for this, the search results, and maybe adding nifty controls for your facets. So I just wanted to leave you there with the idea that, yeah, it's a Django portal, okay? It's nothing particularly fancy, but we've already added all the code that gets it connected to a Globus collection. So that means that if you have a Globus Connect server set up, and it's in a Science DMZ so that all the transfers to and from it are high performance and everything, you can use this portal to provide nice user interface for that data and start indexing metadata and making stuff more discoverable. Questions? Yes. Vas, do we have a microphone? Uh-oh. Oh, there it is. Bridget's got it.
Okay, thank you.
It's on.
With the distinct access policies between data and metadata, awesome. Can you do that within metadata? So some metadata being public and some restricted.
I didn't hear the question, Vas, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the question was, can you, within the metadata itself, can you flag some attributes as being visible and others not, or
yes.
some being public, some being, yeah,
Awesome.
so you can have specific visibility access policies on every single field, basically attribute, yeah.
Yeah, in practice, your portal will probably have only a few levels of visibility, but if you really wanted to go whole hog on your, policies, you could have a different policy on every single record. And basically what it says in it is which Globus groups is this visible to, or which Globus identities is this visible to. So you could either have things like lliming@uchicago.edu, one person, or you could have group like, here's the group UUID for, I don't know, CFDE reviewers or something like that. And yeah, as long as it's a group ID or a user ID, it'll know whether to display it in search results when that person logs in or not. Anybody else? I know it's late in the day.
And actually, just on that question, that's a very common use case in biosciences, life sciences, where,
yep.
Especially if you have a mix of open and protected data where you want to limit what's actually visible to the user. So we have a couple of examples of portals that have been built using Globus Search that have that sort of distinction. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to leave up here our references for you. Our doc site, always available to you. The GitHub GitHub project for Globus. This is all of our public repositories. Did we leave them with the Django? Yes, in the notes, Vass's cheat sheet at bit.ly/GW-TUT. You have the Django Globus Portal Framework repo and the cookie cutter repo that you can use for bootstrapping. So, you know, maybe if next week you feel like you are not tired anymore and you want to try it out, go for it. And then if you get stuck, outreach at globus.org or support at globus.org are really good resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our program. I appreciate everybody coming out. It's great to see many of you again and meet many new faces. And thank you to those that joined us online. We also had a pretty strong presence throughout the 2 days, which is wonderful. Great questions. I hope many of you will continue to engage with us. And we'll call it a wrap. And we'll see some of you tomorrow in the customer forum. If you are a subscriber and you have not been sent a link, or if you haven't received an invite to tomorrow's session, please come and see me. We'll get it sorted out. Thank you. We are adjourned.